in the heart of East Brook, a forgotten neighborhood where broken glass outnumbered streetlights, justice had a price. They called him Ghost, not because he disappeared, but because nobody believed he'd make it to 18. From the streets that tried to break him to the courtroom that tried to define him, one man will rise, not to fight the law, but to rewrite it. This is not just a story of survival. It's a war for truth. His name is Jamal Carter. He learned early that survival wasn't guaranteed. It was earned. He was born to a mother who worked double shifts at the nursing home and a father who never made a home at all. The streets raised most of his friends. But the streets didn't want to raise Jamal. They wanted to break him. At 12, Jamal learned what the system looked like up close. His best friend Tyrone was taken away, not for violence, but for truancy. When his mother cried on the sidewalk, the officers just told her, "That's the law, ma'am." That was the first time Jamal realized that laws don't always mean justice. He was bullied for being different. He refused to join the local crew, the South Side Kings, a group of teens who ran errands for older dealers. To them, his refusal was a weakness. To Jamal, it was the only way out. One afternoon after school, they cornered him behind the old gym. 5 boys, one purpose. They wanted to remind him that in the hood, nobody stays clean for long. But Jamal didn't fight back. He walked home, bruised or unbroken, and made himself a promise. One day, I'll fight battles that matter. By 16, temptation came wearing sneakers and gold chains. He'd see the same boys who mocked him pull up in cars they couldn't afford, with pockets full of money and no future behind the wheel. Meanwhile, Jamal worked nights stacking shelves at the corner store, studying between shifts under flickering fluorescent lights. He didn't have much, but he had purpose. One night, an officer entered the store, looked at Jamal, then the cash register, then back at Jamal. "You fit the description," he said. No explanation, no apology. They handcuffed him in front of customers. He was 17, charged for a robbery that never happened. For the first time, Jamal faced a system that would shape his destiny. The public defender barely looked at him. The prosecutor called him a young man with gang affiliation. But Jamal had never joined a gang. The truth didn't matter. The statistics did. In America, young black men are nearly 5 times more likely to be arrested than white youth, even when committing the same offenses. Jamal wasn't a statistic, but that's exactly how he was treated. After weeks of uncertainty, the store's camera footage cleared him. Case dismissed. But his reputation wasn't. At school, whispers followed him. Jobs turned him away. And that's when he met Miss Thompson, his history teacher, a woman who refused to let brilliance rot in the shadow of injustice. "Jamal," she said, "the system is broken, but you can learn how to fix it." That night, Jamal wrote a letter to himself. "I will not be another headline. I will be the one who rewrites them." He graduated top of his class. While others celebrated with parties, Jamal went home to a silent apartment. His mother too exhausted to stay awake. She'd left a note on the kitchen table. "You did it, baby. Keep going. Don't stop here." He stared at her handwriting, tears falling onto the ink. He didn't just want to leave the hood. He wanted to come back for it. And then the letter came, the one that changed everything. "Congratulations, Jamal Carter. You've been accepted to Harvard Law School." For the first time in his life, he realized that destiny doesn't always come from where you're born, but from where you refuse to stay. Harvard wasn't the dream he expected. He was surrounded by privilege that spoke in a language he didn't understand. When professors quoted philosophers, Jamal thought of survival. When classmates bragged about internships, Jamal sent money home to keep the lights on. One professor once asked in front of class, "Mr. Carter, do you believe justice can ever be objective?" He paused. "Not when people like me are born guilty." The room went silent. From that day, they stopped seeing him as a student and started seeing him as a reminder. But Jamal didn't fold. He graduated valedictorian from Harvard Law School with a speech that left the entire hall on its feet. "Justice," he said, "isn't blind. It just needs new glasses." He was now attorney Jamal Carter, a man who turned pain into purpose. He knew what it felt like to be silenced. Now, he'd dedicate his life to giving others a voice. And soon, he'd face his first cases, each one revealing not just the flaws in the system, but the strength of those fighting to survive it. Halfway through his second year, he met Professor Linda Walker, one of the few instructors who didn't see his background as a burden. She was a civil rights attorney who'd spent decades fighting systemic injustice. "Jamal," she told him one day after class, "you have fire, but you need focus. Learn the rules so you can rewrite them." Under her mentorship, Jamal joined a student legal clinic that provided free defense for low-income residents in Boston. His first client was a young black man accused of vandalism. When Jamal met him, he recognized the look in his eyes, the same mix of anger and exhaustion he once carried. The case was small, but it lit something big inside him. He realized this was his calling, to stand where others couldn't, to speak where others were silenced. Every success came with guilt. At night, Jamal called home. His mother was proud but tired, her health declining, her bills stacking. Back in East Brook, his childhood friends were disappearing, some to prison, others to the grave. He once told a classmate, "You're studying for the future. I'm studying to survive it." The words hung heavy, because even as he stood on the steps of Harvard, Jamal still felt the pull of the streets. Not because he wanted to go back, but because he didn't want to forget. During his final year, Jamal landed an internship at a prestigious law firm. Marble floors, glass walls, partners with handshakes that cost more than his rent. He wore borrowed suits and secondhand shoes, but he spoke like a man who belonged. Still, he couldn't ignore what he saw. He noticed how certain clients were treated and how others weren't. He watched a senior partner dismiss a black mother's discrimination claim because it was too emotional. That night, Jamal wrote in his notebook, "The law is not emotionless. It's a reflection of whose emotions matter." He knew then that corporate law wasn't his path. He'd seen too many doors open for money and close for justice. When graduation day came, Jamal stood on stage, cap and gown pressed, his mother watching from the crowd in a borrowed dress. Tears filled her eyes as he approached the podium. He spoke without notes. "To those who told me I couldn't, thank you for being wrong. To those who told me I could, thank you for being right. I'm not here because I was chosen. I'm here because I refuse to quit." The hall erupted in applause. But amid the celebration, Jamal felt a new kind of silence inside, the weight of purpose. He wasn't done. He was just beginning. When he returned to East Brook, it hadn't changed much. The liquor stores were still open late. The school still had broken windows. And the same kids who once bullied him now nodded with quiet respect as he passed. He stopped by Ms. Thompson's classroom. She was older now, gray hair tucked behind her ear, still teaching hope to kids who'd nearly given up. "You did it, Jamal," she said. "Now show them they can too." That night, he stood at his window, looking out at the same streets that once tried to break him. He thought about Tyrone, about his mother, about every kid who'd been told they'd never make it out. And he made a new promise. "I won't just fight for justice. I'll teach others how to demand it." Jamal opened his own practice the following year, Carter Legal Defense, a small office on the corner of Maple and Fifth, with peeling paint and secondhand furniture. But it was his, and soon it would become the place where the system was forced to listen, because Jamal's first real case, his first true test, was about to walk through that door. They say when you fight the system, it fights back. And for attorney Jamal Carter, that truth came alive the day his first client walked through as the boy's name was Andre Miller, 16 years old, arrested for stealing a pair of sneakers from a downtown store. Except he didn't steal them. The security guard did. Surveillance footage showed Andre walking out empty-handed. But the guard insisted otherwise. The store refused to release the tape, and the court-appointed attorney wanted him to take a plea deal. When Jamal read the case file, his hands shook. He saw himself in those pages, a kid caught in a lie the world believed before he could speak. False accusations of theft are one of the most common triggers for youth incarceration among minorities. In some U.S. states, a single misdemeanor can follow a teen into adulthood, costing jobs, housing, and even college opportunities. Jamal visited Andre in juvenile detention. The boy looked up and said, "It doesn't matter what I say. They already think I'm guilty." And Jamal replied, "Then I'll make them see you're not." Pause. Tension builds slightly. Jamal subpoenaed the store's footage. He spent weeks filing motions, facing denials, and then, finally, a clerk leaked the video. Andre was innocent. In court, Jamal played the footage before the jury. The silence in the room was electric. Verdict, not guilty. As Andre hugged him after court, Jamal whispered, "You don't owe the world an apology for existing. You owe yourself a future." The second case hit closer to home. A man named Darius Hill, a delivery driver, was pulled over for a broken taillight. Minutes later, he was thrown to the ground, handcuffed, and charged with resisting arrest. Body cam footage? Lost. In the U.S., over 60% of traffic stops involving black men lead to searches, despite lower rates of contraband found compared to white drivers. Jamal took the case pro bono. When he met Darius, the man's hands were still shaking. "I didn't fight them," Darius said. "I just asked why." Jamal began digging. He discovered that the same officer had a pattern of arrests that were mysteriously dropped before trial, all black men, all similar charges. In court, Jamal didn't just defend Darius. He exposed the pattern. He presented witness statements, dispatch records, and one leaked audio clip from a police briefing, proving the officer's bias. The courtroom erupted when the judge dismissed the case. The officer was suspended pending investigation. It wasn't just a win for one man. It was a crack in the wall. And in every system of injustice, cracks are how the light gets in. The third case was different, quieter, but heavier. A woman named Danielle Rivers, a high school teacher, was fired for unprofessional conduct. Her real crime? Speaking up about racial bias in her school's grading system. Jamal sat with her, listening as she cried over coffee-stained lesson plans. "They said I was too angry," she said. "They said my students didn't deserve extra credit because they'd never make it anyway." Jamal knew the law was stacked against whistleblowers, but he also knew silence was complicity. He built a case around freedom of speech and wrongful termination, pulling emails, teacher records, and internal memos that showed how students of color were being graded differently. The trial drew national attention. News crews filled hallways. When the verdict came in, Danielle was reinstated with back pay and public apology. That night, Jamal stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by students holding handmade signs. "Justice for Ms. Rivers. Grades don't define worth." For the first time, he saw what hope looked like, not as a word, but as a movement. The final case that defined Jamal Carter's legacy wasn't in a courtroom. It started in a living room, one with peeling wallpaper and eviction papers taped to the fridge. Martha Johnson, a single mother of 3, was being evicted for excessive noise. But neighbors told another story. Complaints only started after her landlord discovered she received housing assistance. Jamal knew this wasn't just about rent. It was about dignity. He filed a discrimination suit. The landlord's attorney laughed in the first hearing. "You can't prove racism," he said. But Jamal did. He found recorded voicemail the landlord accidentally left on a tenant's phone. "I don't want those Section 8 people ruining my property." In court, Jamal played that voicemail aloud. Every word cut through the silence like thunder. Verdict: guilty of housing discrimination. Martha kept her home, and Jamal's firm made headlines. Overnight, his small office became a symbol, not of perfection, but of possibility. He'd won 4 battles. But the war wasn't over. Success came with sacrifice. Jamal was no longer the invisible kid from East Brook, but visibility came with enemies. Online hate, threats, pressure from those in power, who preferred him silent. There were days he questioned if it was worth it. Then one night, he found an envelope slipped under his office door. Inside was a handwritten note. "Because of you, my son didn't give up. Thank you for seeing us." He kept that letter on his desk, framed in glass, a reminder of why he started. He wasn't just defending clients. He was defending generations. Each case taught a lesson, that silence protects the oppressor, that the law means nothing without empathy, and that one voice, backed by truth, can echo louder than a courtroom's gavel. But Jamal Carter wasn't done. His next fight wouldn't be in court. It would be in his community, in the same streets that once told him he'd never make out alive. The law gave Jamal Carter a platform, but the truth gave him purpose. He had defended the accused, challenged the system, and exposed injustice. But now, he wanted to rebuild what the system had broken. Jamal returned to East Brook, the same neighborhood that once laughed at his dreams. The same cracked sidewalks where he'd been bullied for not joining the streets. The same corner store where police once stopped him just because. Only now, the same kids stared in awe. "That's him," one whispered. "The lawyer on TV." Pause. Light street sounds, laughter, kids playing. Jamal walked through the project slowly, remembering every face that didn't make it out. Dante, his childhood friend, killed in a street fight at 17. Keisha, expelled after one wrong crowd. His mother, who passed before she could see him graduate Harvard. He carried all of them inside him, like names carved into his soul. Sometimes success feels heavier than failure, because every step forward reminds you of the ones who never got the chance. In 2022, Jamal founded the Carter Initiative, a nonprofit program for at-risk Black youth. Its mission was simple: to teach what the streets never did: self-worth, discipline, and purpose. He hosted weekend workshops in an abandoned rec center, turning it into a place of learning and safety. He called the sessions Real Talk. Kids showed up for free pizza, but stayed for his stories. "I know what it's like to be judged before you even open your mouth," he'd tell them. "But every system that tries to define you can be rewritten if you learn how to write your own name in bold." Jamal's workshops taught kids about more than law. He taught financial literacy, civic rights, debate skills, and how to speak to authority without fear. He even brought in local police officers for open dialogue sessions, not to defend the system, but to confront it face to face with truth and accountability. The Carter Initiative grew fast. Within a year, it became a national model for community-led justice education. The following summer, Jamal was invited to speak at the Harvard Law commencement, the same school that once felt like a foreign world to him. He stood before thousands, but his mind was back in that one-bedroom apartment where his mother prayed for rent money. He began with a pause, long, deliberate, then spoke. "When I was 16, I thought the system defined me. When I was 20, I thought I could beat it. Now I know we can rebuild it. Justice is not charity. It's not a favor handed down by power. It's a right, earned through struggle, kept alive by truth. Every time I stand in court, I remember where I came from, the block that raised me, the people who doubted me, and the mother who believed before anyone else did." The crowd rose to its feet, but Jamal didn't smile. He looked up, eyes glistening, and whispered, "This is for her." Months later, Jamal took a case that hit closer to home than any before. A teenage boy, Malik, charged with assault after defending himself from bullies outside a corner store. The prosecutor painted Malik as dangerous. The media called him another troubled youth. But Jamal knew better. He saw himself. He visited Malik in juvenile detention. The boy sat in silence, hoodie pulled low. "They said I should have just walked away," he whispered. "But they never walk away from us." At trial, Jamal didn't argue with anger. He argued context, systemic neglect, poverty, and racial bias in school discipline. He quoted his own Harvard dissertation on implicit bias in youth sentencing. Studies show Black students are suspended and arrested at rates up to 3 times higher than their white peers for the same behavior. For many, the school-to-prison pipeline begins with simple defiance and ends with lost potential. When Jamal finished his closing argument, there wasn't a sound in the courtroom. Verdict, not guilty. Malik walked free. Afterward, Malik hugged Jamal tight and said, "I want to be like you when I grow up." And for the first time, Jamal smiled, not the smile of a lawyer who won a case, but a man who finally changed the ending of his own story. Years later, Jamal walked to the same playground where his life nearly went wrong. He saw kids playing basketball, laughing, planning college trips. One wore a shirt that read, "The Carter Initiative Dream Bigger." He stopped, closed his eyes, and exhaled. "We made it," he whispered. "All of us." Jamal Carter's story isn't just about one man's redemption. It's about rewriting the story of a generation. Because for too long, young black men were told they had only two choices, the block or the system. But Jamal proved there's a third path, to change the system itself. Today, his programs run in over 30 cities. Juvenile arrest rates in those communities have dropped by nearly 40%, and hundreds of young people, once labeled lost, are now teachers, activists, lawyers, and leaders. He turned pain into purpose, anger into action, struggle into strength. We can't all be lawyers, he once said, but we can all fight for what's right in our own way, from the block to the bench, from silence to change. This is not the story of Jamal Carter. It's the story of every young soul who refuses to give up on tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more untold stories. See you on the next one.